This is going to be video 6 on the turtle shell bone drawing. This is the graphite. Here's the ink that I use the glass pen and put the dots in, and now the ink is drying. And obviously I'm working on 2 at once now. And when I went to do this, I realized that some of you might also want to do that, especially if you're new to pen and ink or stippling, because now you have to wait till tomorrow, erase the letter, the pencil, and see in your mind ways of building up the shadows. So while you're waiting, there's nothing wrong with doing a pencil drawing. So you can see on the side view of the shell, I've started to add texture and a little bit of shadow. I've also started to do it here, although it's fairly rough. Now, one thing I want to point out, up here I had distinct lines drawn that the shading is going to be able to replace. Because with graphite you can use your pencil, your eraser, and your paper stub. On the ink, and this is why this is a good practice lesson, you're going to be doing the same thing. When you think of pen and ink stippling, and I have a couple of ink drawings of cats that are stippled, that the cats were actually brown tabbies, but the overall tone of the drawing is gray. That overall tone, even in the lightest areas, you're going to have dots that are spaced different distances apart. So in here, you're making your dots closer together. Over here, you're making them far apart. And that is how you build up light and shadow with dots. It's similar to graphite, except you have to take your thinking about graphite and put it into dots. And so let's say you have a dot every inch over here, and you put them that far away over the whole shell here, and then in here make them half an inch apart, and tighter together until you build up your grays. Even though it's light and dark, even though the shell is a beige, what you're doing is using, in this case, brown dots to build up the tonal qualities of a physical item. And it takes some thinking, because if you were working in paint, this is easy, because all you have to do is do the shapes and the color. But when you have to tell your brain to think of this in all polka dots and how far apart the polka dots are, a middle step is graphite. So there's nothing wrong with doing a graphite drawing, or even in your scribbling. These look childish, but what I was doing was, on the turtle here, a real turtle would have legs and a head. Is their back and their spine, that's where their spine is that more important than I have it right here? In other words, this is where that spine is. Should that be the focus of the drawing instead of the shape and the tone? So your scribbling is always going to tell you something, even if it looks like scribbling. But so graphite, what I'm doing is developing the spine area to see how dark or light this gets. So it's just another hint video, really, that with pen and ink stippling in particular, you are taking a real object or an object and changing the view into dots that are placed certain distances apart. And when it's done correctly, it should almost look like velvet. that the areas move from one lightness or darkness to another without a lot of abrupt changes. So that's the overall tonal effect. But in this, as you can see, I've already decided the spine is the feature. So mine's not going to end up looking like velvet. And what I'm doing with the graphite is further exploring whether or not the spine on this part of the shell, if this needs a special treatment. So don't feel funny about doing graphite in between or at the same time you're doing an ink drawing.